Hey everyone, I am Manolia. Today's topic is logical fallacies. Here is my content list. I'll mention about the concept of relevance and fallacies of relevance. Firstly, the concept of relevance. The concept of relevance is essential to logic, as it helps us to distinguish between valid and invalid arguments. A statement can be relevant to another statement even if the first statement is completely false. Whether a statement is relevant to another usually depends on the context in which the statements are made. Relevance can be divided into three categories. First one, positive relevance. A statement is positively relevant to another statement if it counts in favor of that statement. Negative relevance. A statement is negatively relevant to another statement if it counts against the statement. And last one, logical irrelevance. A statement is logically irrelevant to another statement if it has no bearing on the truth or falsity of that statement. Personal attack. The fallacy of personal attack occurs when someone rejects another person's argument or claim by attacking the person themselves rather than addressing the merits of the argument or claim. In this fallacy, the arguer typically uses the following flat pattern of reasoning: attack the character of the person making the argument, conclude that the person's argument is invalid or worthless because of their character. Here is an example. Professor Duggie has argued for more emphasis on music in our F2F classes to facilitate creatively, but Duggie is a selfish, big-headed fool. I absolutely refuse to listen to him. X is a bad person, therefore X arguments must be bad. Attacking to motive is a logical fallacy in which an arguer questions or criticizes the motivations or biases of a person making an argument rather than addressing the quality or validity of the argument or claims itself. Pattern of this fallacy. X is biased or has questionable motives, therefore X arguments or claims should be rejected. And here an example. Thomas has argued that we need to give money to ASB, but Thomas is a member of ASB. Obviously, his argument is a lot of self-serving nonsense. But not all attacks on an arguer motives are fallacious. For example, Barton Wexler, spokesperson for an American Tobacco Growers Association, has argued that there is no credible scientific evidence that cigarette smoking causes cancer. Given Wexler's obvious bias in the matter, his arguments should be taken with a grain of salt. An argument against a spokesperson for the American Tobacco Growers Association is mentioned. Given their obvious bias, the argument should be taken with caution. This is not a fallacy, but valid concern of bias. Look who is talking. This fallacy occurs when someone dismisses another person's argument or claim by pointing out that the person doesn't follow their own advice or standards. If X fails to follow his or her own advice, therefore X's claim or argument should be rejected. This reasoning is fallacious because the strength or weakness of an argument should be evaluated based on the merits of the argument itself, not on the behavior or actions of the person making the argument. For example, doctor, you should quit smoking. Patient, look who is talking. I'll quit when you do. Two wrongs make a right. This fallacy takes place when an individual argues that a wrongful action they've taken is justified because someone else has committed a similar or worse wronging. For example, America does not need to regulate population because China is producing more pollution than we are. Fallacy of scare tactics. This fallacy occurs when an arguer uses threats or intimidation to try to persuade someone to accept a conclusion, and the threat is not logically relevant to the truth of the conclusion. The fallacy arises because the threat is meant to manipulate or frighten the audience into argument rather than providing sound rational reasons for accepting the argument. For example, the Democrats don't care if they burn down and destroy the nation. This is true. Appeal to pity. This fallacy takes place when an arguer uses emotional appeals, specifically attempting to elicit pity or compassion from the audience in a way that is irrelevant to the argument's conclusion. The fallacy arises because the arguer relies on emotion and pity to sway the audience's judgment, rather than providing irrational reasons for accepting the argument. Bandwagon argument. This fallacy occurs when an arguer tries to persuade someone to adopt a belief or engage in a practice simply because when many others believe or do the same thing. The fallacy arises because the popularity or widespread belief in something doesn't necessarily provide evidence that the belief is true or the practice is good. For example, if everyone went and jumped over a cliff, would you? Strawman. This fallacy occurs when an arguer mispresents or distorts an opponent's argument or position, making it appear weaker or less plausible than it actually is. The arguer then attacks the distorted version rather than addressing the opponent's actual argument. The fallacy arises because it mispresents the opponent's position, creating a weaker or flawed version of the argument that's easier to attack. This tactic avoids addressing the opponent's actual argument and is therefore is misleading and unfair way of arguing. Here is example. We should eat less beef. Raising cow requires high amounts of water and land and emits a lot of carbon. So you want to force everyone to be a vegetarian. The red herring fallacy, an arguer introduced an unrelated issue to divert attention and make it seem as if the original issue has been addressed or resolved. The fallacy of, for example, Mom, I want that toy. Mom is say that, honey, let's rush home. You me treat for you. Equivocation. The fallacy of this occurs when a keyword is used in two or more different senses in the same argument, and the apparent success of the argument depends on this shift in meaning. In other words, the argument relies on the ambiguity or multiple meanings of a word to create the illusion of a valid argument when it's in fact invalid. For example, all trees have barks, every dog barks, therefore every dog is a tree. Begging the question, also known as circular reasoning, occurs when an arguer assumes the truth of the conclusion they are trying to prove within argument itself. There are two common ways to commit this fallacy. It's an attempt to prove something is true while simultaneously taking that same thing for granted. For example, it's time you to go to bed because it's your bedtime. Thank you for listening to